Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome all of you in our fifth and final day of the lecture series, that is Enlightening Education. For the last 4 days, we have experienced various facets of this teachership and teacherhood. Today, we'll go through this the epitome of this concept of teachership or teacherhood, that is the Acharya Vrata. And to talk about this, we have today with us the director of Jnana Prabodhini, Dr. Girish Rao Bapat. Raginitai Naik of Jnana Prabodhini will introduce him. So I request Raginitai to please introduce Dr. Girish Rao Bapat. Raginitai.
Yes. Namaskar. Namaste to all. Well, this is really an honor introducing Girish out to you all. As just now we heard that this is going to be the last lecture of this series of enlightening education, and I sincerely feel that it's going to be the pinnacle of this series that we are going to learn about an exemplar teacher, life of an exemplar teacher or acharya, as it is said here. And we are really going to be enlightened in a totally different way. Let me introduce Dr. Girish Rao Bapat to you all. He has done his MSc in organic chemistry from Pune University, and then he completed his PhD in the same subject from Canada. And he has also done his MEd and DBM from Management Institute in Pune. Presently, Dr. Girish Rao is the director of Jnana Prabodhini, which, as you know, is an educational institute. And he has taken up this responsibility since 1989. He himself is an alumnus of Jnana Prabodhini Prashala, which, as you know, is a school for gifted students. And he has also worked as the principal of this same school for 5 years. As you know, Jnana Prabodhini works in different fields like education, rural development, health, social organization, research, and national integration. And as the director, Dr. Girish Rao Bapat supervises all these activities in all these fields. I must tell you that he has taken a vow of sannyas according to the constitution of Jnana Prabodhini. Now, he has devoted his whole life for social cause as a sannyasi in plain clothes. So he is there for us, for the institute, available 24 hours. Girish Rao has traveled all over India and even outside, and he has taken part in organizing relief works and youth camps and study tours. He himself is interested in Advaita Vedanta and the Indian philosophy, Indian education, even modern sciences. And he has conducted study camps for youths on Bhagavad Gita and Das Bodh, and even personalities like Gandhiji and Ambedkar. He has conducted training sessions for teachers. He is doing that actually, and teachers and principals of different schools and colleges, for social activists from different organizations, and for graduate trainees. And he also writes a lot about all these topics. And under his able guidance and leadership, Jnana Prabodhini's work has expanded in many areas, and of course, it has impressed and impacted those fields. What we are going to learn today, what I feel we are going to learn is actually it's the dharma of a teacher, let us say, that how a teacher should spend his life way of life, let us say. Uh, and well, we are shaping our children. Okay, they are inner selves. I feel it's our duty to shape ourselves as well and be updated and try to, um, as the basic aim of education says, that it's the manifestation of perfection. So we should be able to manifest ourselves. So I think today's lecture is going to give us those ways in which we can take out that exemplar teacher out of us, how we can follow a life or a way in which we could be uh, an acharya in the true sense of that term. So I think it's taking up, a responsibility of our own development and manifesting that perfection in us. And for that, as I think you have already heard from different speakers, that there are kind of breaths that we take up. So this is also a breath that we are going to take up as a teacher, and we will proceed through this to be an exemplar teacher. So I'm really interested in this topic, and I'm really curious that how we are going to follow this. So I request Girish Rao to please guide us and tell us the path to be an exemplar teacher. Over to Girish.
My namaskar to all the members of the remote audience from different parts of India. Today I am going to talk about Acharya Vrat. Both are Sanskrit words, and separately, maybe we are familiar with the word Acharya and also familiar with the word Vrat. But when we put these two words together, many eyebrows are raised. What is this new concept? We are familiar with the word Vrat. If we try to translate it into English, the dictionary will show a pledge or an oath or a vow. I think that these words do not bring the spirit of the word Vrat. Is it code of conduct? No, because the code of conduct is generally prescribed by someone else. As in many institutions, there is a dress code. We will not dress according to that code unless we are told to do so. So the code of conduct is most of the time set by someone else. Then what is a Vrat? I have translated it as a work ethic. As we have Acharya Vrat, we can also have Vidyarthi Vrat or Vidya Vrat. When I was doing my PhD, I was following my Vidya Vrat. My guide or supervisor, of course, was not Indian, he was a Canadian. So he used the word which he understood. And he described my way of working as my work ethic. So I used that word here. The word work ethic is generally used with the adjective Protestant work ethic. And Protestant work ethic is the term used to describe the qualities of men and women who brought the modern era of industrialization, scientific research into Western Europe and USA. All the countries of Western Europe and USA have progressed because the majority population has a definite attitude towards their work. And this attitude consists of diligence, discipline, efficiency, hard work, love for work, excellence. And the early people who started this era of change in these countries, they were also characterized by frugality and thrift. So what is a work ethic? It generally means that first you decide the end, the objective, the goal of your work. And then you choose the means, the way in which you are going to achieve that objective. And once you have fixed the end and selected the means, then they say forget about the end and concentrate on the means. The means will take care of the end. So if you work in this way, then in India we say that we are following our vrat. And in the Western countries, they say that we have our own work ethic. So Acharya Vrat is work ethic for an exemplar teacher who can be an example to his or her students. In this lecture series, there have been 4 lectures so far. One on Panchakos Vikasan, or the development of the 5 sheets of our personality. Then enhancement of self, our self-concept, our self-esteem. Then how to convert our motivation into dynamism, and how to evaluate ourselves while we are converting our motivation into dynamism. Now, all the 4 previous lecturers, they have made several suggestions while they were speaking. Once we decide to put all those suggestions into practice, that means we have decided to follow our Acharya Vrat. Who is an Acharya or an exemplar teacher? The word Acharya itself brings before our eyes a picture of maybe Dronacharya, or Acharya Panini, or Acharya Patanjali. But these are names from very old times. Can they be role models for us? So I was searching for a role model Acharya from our times. And I have found one. There are many, but I have selected one because he was a university professor, a teacher. He had received modern education and he was also a scientist and an industrialist. I have seen many Bengali names in the participants list. So the Acharya whom I have selected is Acharya Prafulla Chandra Rai. He was a chemistry professor in Presidency College, Calcutta. Someone has described his teaching style. He taught for more than 30 years. But before every lecture, he devoted 1 hour for preparation of that lecture. He was a science teacher. So before he started his lecture, he always demonstrated one experiment. And while he was teaching, suppose he was teaching about metals, then he would start with what are the various ores in which we find this metal. Whether those ores are available in India, in what parts of India, in what abundance, how much money and how much efforts are required to extract the metal from the ore. What are the possibilities of economic development if that metal is used in industries? And in what way the industrialization of our country can be taken forward with the use of this metal? And most of these things were not available in textbooks of that time or even of today. But he always made it a point that if I'm going to teach about metals, I have to teach how that metal is going to be used in our country. This was during his scheduled lectures. But he used to stay in the college premises near his laboratory. And when he was walking in the corridors, going from one place to other, if he saw a classroom where the teacher has not yet arrived and the students are just sitting there, would enter that classroom and start speaking with the student. Now not chemistry. Now about the social situation in India, the responsibility of youth, and how they have to use our natural resources properly and conserve them. This was in the college premises. What about outside the college premises? He is known for the various social service activities he started with the help of his students, especially relief work during floods, which were very common in Bengal at that time. And one great scientist who was his student at that time, Meghnad Saha, in his memoirs, he has related that while we were collecting relief material and distributing relief material to flood affected people, Acharya used to talk to us about ways and means which have to be discovered, which have to be found to control the floods. All this talk motivated Meghnad Saha. He started a river control laboratory study project in his college, and later that study was used to establish the Damodar Valley Corporation, which brought the whole river system under control and the floods were reduced. This was only one aspect of Acharya Prafulla Chandra Rai's work. He was telling to the students that chemistry and their knowledge of chemistry should be used for industrialization of India. So he had to demonstrate that also. If he had experiments before his lectures, then whatever was the content of the lecture, he has also to demonstrate that, not just the scientific principles, but the application of science. And so he founded the Bengal Chemical and Pharmaceutical Works, the first Swadeshi chemical industry in Bengal and in India. It is still working today. And last year when this COVID pandemic started, there was a talk of the drug called hydroxychloroquine. Now it happens that at that time, Bengal Chemical and Pharmaceutical Works was the only public sector unit in India which could produce that hydroxychloroquine. So he had built a tradition of research and production by founding this Bengal Chemical and Industrial Pharmaceutical Works. And after this, he has also written a history of Indian chemistry, right from the ancient times. Now, all this life sketch, a short life sketch of Acharya Prafulla Chandra Rai, illustrates before us what an Acharya should do. Teachers generally give lectures. Good teachers give good lectures. But a better teacher, along with the lectures, has dialogue, has conversation, formal and informal, with his students. And an Acharya is more than a better teacher. He has also contact sessions with the students. He likes being together in company with of the students, and the students also enjoy the company of their Acharya. During dialogue, he gives suggestions, answers their questions, gives explanation. And when they are in company together, he demonstrates how to act, how to work, how to behave. The students can observe that consciously and learn from that. And the students also unconsciously imbibe the atmosphere which has been created by his attitude towards work, by the way he looks towards his work and he executes his work. So can I have the first slide, Swapnil? Next one, please. So what an Acharya does is not only teaching the students, but educating the students. And that education, according to the definition by Swami Vivekananda, is the manifestation of perfection already in man. Now we have different ideas about perfection. But the person who used this word, Swami Vivekananda, said that perfection already in man means the sum total of energy of the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. All material things, rocks, metals, plastics, we don't know whether they have a mind, but we say that they're unconscious. Plants, they have some sensation, but we don't know whether they are conscious, and so we say that they're unconscious. Animals, they also have sensation and maybe some consciousness, but most of the animal mind is unconscious. They do not perceive themselves as perceiving or sensing the environment. But we human beings, we can perceive ourselves in the act of perception, in the act of sensation. So we say that we are conscious. But we are also many times aware that we have an unconscious mind also. So the sum total of energy of our conscious mind, which is the waking mind, which is acting when we are awake, and the unconscious mind, which is acting mainly when we are seeing dreams in our sleep. We have no control over that mind. We cannot plan what dreams to see. But that unconscious mind also has a lot of energy in it. And the sum total of energy of the unconscious and unconscious mind, Swami Vivekananda says, is the perfection already in man. So what is the manifestation of perfection? The conscious mind, we are already aware of it. When we bring the unconscious mind also under the control of our conscious mind, then there will be no slip of tongue when we are speaking. There will be no automatic laughter when someone is speaking, because everything will be the control of our conscious mind. We will decide our every spoken word, every action, every nuance in our behavior. When that happens, Swamiji says, that means we are manifesting our perfection. Next slide, please. So today we are going to see that we are teachers, good teachers, inquisitive teachers, trying to improve ourselves. If we decide to become an acharya, then what should be the direction of our efforts? A good teacher works with his or her conscious mind, and using all the qualities of our conscious mind, a teacher gives excellent academic education, completes the syllabus, prepares the students for examination. The students get very good marks in the examination, are grateful towards the teacher. So we are good teachers. The acharya works with total consciousness, the unconscious mind and the unconscious mind, which is under his control, under the control of his conscious mind. And the acharya works not only to give excellent academic education, but also for the manifestation of perfection in his or her students. So the unconscious mind of the students comes under their control. Now, for doing this, there is another thing which we have to take into account. Generally, the procedures which we use for teaching can be divided into objective procedures and subjective procedures. The teachers are expected to be masters of objective procedures. What is an objective procedure? In objective procedures, the teacher is only a vehicle because the syllabus is set by the board. The number of periods per week are defined by the school administration. The number of working days are defined. The test books are prescribed. The way the exam will be held is predetermined. And the whole system is geared in such a way that any teacher can go to any school and teach any batch of or group of students, and they are expected to give excellent academic results. So the teacher is only an instrument, and the personality of teacher does not matter much. It always brings into effect some differences. But the idea is that whoever is the teacher and wherever they are teaching, during summer or in winter or in rainy season, or I'm teaching any group of students in Tamil Nadu or Jammu and Kashmir or Arunachal Pradesh or Gujarat or Kutch or Rajasthan desert or the forest of Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand, doesn't matter. If it is a central board of secondary education, then all over India, the same quality of academic education is expected, and the way in which we impart that education, all those ways constitute the objective procedures. Acharya is a master of objective procedures, but he uses them selectively and also makes use of subjective procedures, which will change according to the teacher. The teacher may use different procedures for different students at different times. And the aim is not good academic results, but the manifestation of perfection, development of the personality of the student. So the Acharya uses mainly subjective procedures in education. We'll just see some of them. Next slide, please. Now, when we are using subjective procedures to teach the students, we are not transferring information or knowledge. We are transferring procedures and processes. So we have to introduce the students to new ways of working. We have to introduce them to new ways of dialogue, how to converse, how to bring about consensus when we are participating in discussions, new ways of writing, expression. Willingness to change habits, and not just willingness, acting upon the choice which we have made and how we are going to change our habits. And this the students do by consciously observing their Acharya and many times unconsciously imitating the way the Acharya is working. And sometimes even the students are ready to inculcate new habits because their Acharya is their role model. He's showing them, demonstrating to them what these new habits will do to their performance, do to their personality. So each Acharya will have some different habits and different ways of working. So these are subjective procedures. There is no prescribed timetable for that. according to the need of the time, the Acharya will teach the students. There are some more subjective procedures. Next slide, please. Reorienting the goals and expanding the vision. For example, what is the goal? Suppose you have to decide to build a dam. Then when a certain height is reached, the goal is reached. In the Narmada Sagar project, there were lots of cases going on in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court in various judgments allowed the construction of the dam to increase the height by 1 more meter, 1 more meter, 1 more meter. So there is a definite objective, and when that goal is reached, the work is over. But what is the purpose of building the dam? Is it for drinking water? Is it for irrigation? Is it for giving employment to the people? So for every action, there has to be a goal and a purpose behind it. And when we think of changing the purpose of our work, what do we mean by making it more pure? Whether the purpose of work is furthering self-interest or furthering the interest of other people, more and more people. Whether it is only for your own benefit and with some loss to other people, then it is an impure purpose. And if it is for the benefit of all, including yourself, the purpose is pure. Now the Acharya demonstrates to students to think about the goals and the purpose of work when you want to start anything. Expanding the horizon of your experience. A very simple example. We try to teach salesmanship skills to our students because that increases their confidence. So going from door to door and sell maybe Rakhis during Raksha Bandhan, that is one experience. Instead of asking them to go door to door sell, if you tell them to have a small stall and operate that stall, that adds a new dimension to their experience. Instead of having an isolated stall in some corner of the street or in front of their house, we ask them to set the stall in a line of other competitors who are selling the same object, like we have in the vegetable market. So many vendors are selling vegetable. So selling something in the presence of competition still expands the horizon of experience. And guiding the students to more and more such experiences, we are expanding the horizon of their experience. Another way of expanding that, in Jnana Prabodhini, we tell our students to participate in public processions. So they have a group dance which they perform during the procession. When they are practicing, they are practicing on the playground. First, the group is stationary, but in the procession they have to move forward. So after they learn the dance when they are stationary, then they have to learn to move forward while dancing. But when they go from the playground to the streets, sometimes the streets are narrow, sometimes there are wide, there are crossings, sometimes there is a divider on the road. So many obstacles compared to the playground. But finally the procession is going to go along that street. So they will have to learn that also. So that expands the horizon of their experience. The scope of the field where they can perform the same activity under different circumstances. Changing the norms of merit or excellence is a subjective procedure. Arranging a small function, executing it completely, completing all the accounts also after that is one norm of excellence. Whether to give importance to that or whether the function has been photographed, video recorded properly, whether the video has been uploaded properly, whether the photos have been sent to the press, what are the reactions in the press, whether that is going to be the norm of your excellence, how much publicity you have got, or what was the perfection during the arrangement of the function. Nowadays, there is another norm. Whatever you do, you put it on the social media and look towards how many likes you have got. The number of likes, that is a new norm of merit or excellence for your program. So you have to decide what should be the norms of merit or excellence of your work, and the Acharya guides the students in that. It is a subjective procedure, it depends on what are the norms for the Acharya also. Changing likes and dislikes of the students or inculcating new interest. A mathematics teacher, if he is an Acharya, he can also create an interest in bird watching because that is his hobby. A language student can create an interest in trekking or hiking because that is his area of interest. And the student gets exposed to the different areas of interest of his Acharya. They are of course good, constructive, but not prescribed in the syllabus. The students learn to like those, take part in those activities, and it gives a new dimension to their personality. So the Acharya works mainly using these subjective procedures with the students. Next slide, please. So we are already teachers, we want to become Acharyas. So while we are trying to become Acharyas, we cannot neglect of our job of being good and better teachers. So we have to keep working with the students even when we are working with ourselves. Academics cannot be neglected. I learned this very hard way. If personality development, creating social awareness, being aware of all the contemporary changes and events, if that is being an Acharya, can we neglect academics? We had that phase in Jnana Prabodhini 30 or 40 years back when I had just started teaching. And it was my first year as the principal. And when I took review, where there are so many objectives and so many activities and so many different capable teachers using so many subjective procedures. Or good school. But if we are doing all these and neglecting academics, not purposefully, but because we are spending more time in all the various activities where subjective procedures are involved, what happened? Up to 8th standard, the classes were full. In 9th and 10th standard, the classes had only half the strength. Half the students had left the school, joined other schools, because they and their parents felt that academics is being neglected. So that cannot be done in a school. A school teacher has to be a very good teacher, try to become better and better, and then try to become an acharya. So while we are taking care of academics, along with academics, what do we have in good schools for development of personality? So many activities. Most of the activities shown on the slide, there are at least a few in most of the good schools. Exceptional school will have all these. But to become an acharya, you have to be interested in at least few of the first 9 activities, and the last activity, aptitude testing and guidance for course selection. If you are conversant with that, then it becomes a very good tool to start conversation, to increase conversation with their students, to have good relationship with your students, because they look towards you as a good guide and counselor. And an acharya, if he can guide the student in course selection for their future academic studies, he has excellent relationship with the students and he can give many other things to his students. So whatever activities you have in your school, along with academics, if you are interested in 1 or 2 or more, that will help you to become an acharya at a faster pace, at a quicker pace. What else? Next slide, please. Actually, having social awareness is a part of your personality. But generally, because it is neglected, or we think that this is something different, it is treated differently, in a separately. Development of social awareness, the students have to be taught to work in groups, because the first interaction they will have with their peers. A group task or a paired task can be going on a small study tour or study visit. It can be just a few hour visit. The students can go with their teachers or even independently if they think they are responsible, and they will learn more if they go independently. Working for the deprived sections of the society. We have a tradition of that in Jnana Prabodhini. And many of our students, they go to remote rural areas and even in slum areas of the cities to teach the students of their age. And while they are teaching students of their children of their own age, they get to know a lot about the social and financial situation in the deprived sections of the society, disaster relief work. Even students can go there. Just 2 years back, there were floods in a town called Sangli in Maharashtra, record floods. And the town library was submerged in water. Thousands of rare books were drenched with water. They were submerged in water for hours together. Our 9th standard students, girls, they went there, sorted the books, tried to restore them, and they also cataloged them for the first time using computers. They cannot go and clear debris, but they can do their own whatever contribution they can have, and that creates social awareness. Listening to experiences of social workers. It creates social awareness. Experiencing Shramakari, doing physical labor in rural areas. But that is just to become aware of a different type of situation in which, other than in where you are living. So you can bring rural students to cities, urban areas. I remember one such visit was arranged and rural students were brought to the city and they were taken to visit the fire station and how the fire brigade operates. Now, there is no fire brigade in villages. So it was a new experience for them and that enriched them. That created awareness of the progress and the problems in urban areas. So I have written rural areas, but it can be in urban areas. Even tribal students can go to rural areas and urban areas. We are working with students of migrant laborers, sugarcane harvesters. We are operating some schools for them. Now, how to create social awareness? Awareness that there is another section of the society which is living in a different situation. From their school, there was one brick kiln, where again there was another set of migrant workers living in a different atmosphere. There the children of the laborers were just roaming about in the brick kiln. And when the students from the sugarcane factory, workers of children of sugarcane harvesters, they visited this brick kiln, they realized that they were more fortunate that they are getting at least some education, while these students are not getting any education at all. That exposure to different types of social situation creates social awareness. Even collecting funds for needy groups and explaining your cause to people, prospective donors, creates that social awareness. Next slide, please. Now, research has shown, research in education and in psychology and in different sciences, that education and research have to go together. And in some progressive schools, some of these activities are going on. Your school may have some. Psychological techniques of memorization means use of various mnemonic devices. There is a lot of pedagogical research in formative and summative evaluation, and most of the boards are making that compulsory. So some of these things, activities, whatever are available in your school, if the teacher becomes conversant with those, starts using those, the chances that he becomes an acharya are more likely, because that adds new dimensions to our personality. Practice of Vedic maths I just shown for example. You can be using abacus, teaching abacus techniques also, doesn't matter. Whatever is available in your schools. So, as a teacher, many times it happens that you become only transferer of information and knowledge. You do not have a repository of your own. Prafulla Chandra Rai has said that a good teacher, if he has to teach 1 ounce to the students, the Acharya should know at least 100 or 1000 ounces. Then only he can transfer 1 ounce to the students properly. So we have to have a large store of experience and information and knowledge with us. We cannot operate a current account of expertise and knowledge when we are teaching. We have to have our own funds, our savings account, our fixed deposits, our own skills and qualities. So while we are working as a teacher, we have to add some qualities, some skills to our repertoire. What do we have today? At what more should we imbibe in us? Next slide, please. So I have prepared a checklist for Acharya. That means checklist for a prospective Acharya. How many things I can do and what else I have to do. If you just start with reading, I visited one rural school and I was talking to the 10th standard students and telling them if they have to prepare for the examination, then if this is June, by August, you should have read all your textbooks. Then you can study for your exams. Don't wait for the teachers to teach any particular lesson. You should read the whole textbook like a storybook. While I was telling that to the students, the principal of that school sent me a note. Please tell this to our teachers also. Because the teachers fall into a practice of reading a particular lesson and going to the class and teaching that. Next lesson can be read when we have to teach it during the next period. So that is regression, and many teachers fall into that trap. We have to go beyond textbook. We have to read it completely. There are handbooks of our teachers prepared by textbook bureaus. We have to read those. There are reference books suggested. Beyond that, you can have additional reading on the subject. You can read what to do to maintain your health of body and mind. Reading beyond teaching subjects. That is very, very, very important. If I am teaching history, I cannot teach only history textbooks. I have to know something about geography, something about sociology, something about economics. That makes me a good history teacher and a good acharya. Being informed about national issues. Daily spiritual reading, I have used the word spiritual, but any reading which expands your mind. You have to make notes of your reading material and you have to think on what you have read, reflective thinking and contemplation on that. There are 10 items written here. You must have read all those while I was speaking. I suggest that just write a number for yourself. How many of these things you do here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 10. How many things you do from this checklist? and what else you can do out of the things which you are not doing yet. You can just write the number. 3 I am doing, 2 I want to do more, or 2 I can do more. Because I am going to give a small task at the end of this checklist. Very small task. Write just the 2 numbers, what you are doing and what you intend to do, what you would like to do. How many? Just the number. 3 and 2, 2 and 5, whatever you think. Next slide, please. Along with reading, a teacher has to write. You have to write your teaching diary. That has to be a daily activity. Sometimes you have to present report of responsibilities, administrative duties other than teaching. It is good if you maintain a personal diary. What you do beyond your school hours and even during school, what you experience beyond teaching. Reflective review is a technique which we in Jnana Prabodhini practice once a year. We called it Manogata. What are the sweet and bitter experiences during the last year? And what can I learn from those experiences? If you write such a reflective review, it helps you to improve yourself. If you keep a file of your annual reflective reviews, I have maintained a file for about 25 years, and just going through those reviews helped me a lot to decide what else I have to learn to do. Once in a while, if you write an academic essay, it will be useful. Essay based on own independent thinking. If essay is a big job, you can write small letters responding to various issues going on in the society, send those to the editor. Generally, if you keep on writing and persist, the editors start printing them. And some may find some help from rewriting or copying spiritual texts, Gita, Ramcharitmanas, Bible, Quran, Japuji. Whatever you think is going to help you. Again, there are 8 things here. Just make a note how many you are already doing and what else you can do. Next slide, please. Beyond reading and writing, the main job of teachers, they have to speak and go on speaking and speaking. So we can do that in an attractive and effective way. So we can practice conversation skills and oratory, and where to use those conversation skills, guiding below average students to improve, guiding advanced students, showing them more avenues where they can go ahead, personal guidance for improvement of merit, how to talk to the students so that they will be motivated to do all these things. It is a skill which you have to learn. Guidance beyond teaching subjects like study habits, other habits and techniques of self-study. Behavioral guidance, how to behave in class, in groups, with elders, with smaller children. Nowadays, in many schools, they have how boys should behave with girls in their class, how girls should behave with boys in their class. It cannot be taught in groups many times, but individual guidance is many times necessary. Guidance related to group work, because earlier I had said that there have to be group tasks given to the students. Envisioning one's own life and lives of others. That means speaking aloud with your students and sharing how you look towards your life and what you think that they should do in their life, they should do in the future. If you envision and have various scenarios which you can do in your life and students can do in their life. That creates a bond with the students, and the students try to learn more and more from you. And speaking on the biographies of role models and interesting books to students, to teachers, that improves our oratory skills. Again, there are 8 activities here. Just make a note how many you are actually doing at the moment and what more you want to do. Next, please. As teachers, we have to assess, evaluate the performance of the students, their improvement. And we use that, do that by evaluating their classwork, their homework. Do you have any own special techniques for that? Do you use different methods for checking? Do you analyze the marks and evaluate the progress of the class and progress of individual students? Do you have a record? When I was teaching in the school, I taught mathematics for 10 years and I had maintained record of all the weekly tests of all the students for all the 10 years, and I had kept those textbooks, those notebooks of my record for another 10 years. And just by looking at the marks which the students had got progressively in various tests, I could visualize the development of that student, not only in mathematics, but many in other things. So that is your data bank, the progress record of your students. Question bank you should have. Question paper blueprint, what you want to evaluate, according to that the question paper setting changes. Review of the country's economic, physical, moral translation, not just during gossiping at tea time, but serious review and trying to analyze what are the changes and why those changes are happening. That is also one way of evaluation. And self-evaluation based on predefined norms. Again, there are 8 things. Just make a note how many things you are doing and what else you want to do. Next slide, please. As a good teacher and acharya, you have to make use of out of school activities for teaching and developing the personality, manifesting the perfection in our students. You can go to visit important places at walking distance. If you can ride a bicycle, on bicycle, you can visit important places that can be visited in a day. Visiting important places from other divisions of the state. Visiting important places from other states. Depending on how much time you can spend, how much you can afford financially. But these are the various things which you can do. And important places can be memorials, museums, gardens, institutions, projects, scenic places of nature, workplaces of role models, so many things. You decide what is important and you can go to that place. I have just given 5 as illustration. You can make a note how many you are already doing and what else you can do now. So I have talked about reading, writing, conversation and oratory, evaluation, and travel. 5 types of activities or 5 small checklists what you can do to become an acharya. So next slide, please. So this is how we can plan to become an exemplar teacher. Each circle represents one bullet point in the checklist. First there were 10, then there were 8 in the next 3, and in the last one there were 5. So whatever you are currently doing, make marks there and join all those points. That will be your current profile. And what else you can do, maybe in the next year or next 2 years, how many things you can add to each column. Join all those points. That will be your target profile. And you are a good or one of the better teachers in your school with your current profile. If you want to become an acharya, maybe you have to go to the top of each column, but that will take some time. So for the next 1 or 2 years, you can have a target profile, and then you can plan for that. If you start thinking in this way, I think any good teacher can strive to become an acharya, and that will improve the quality of education in your school and in our country as well. I had some more slides, how to grow from current profile to target profile. We have to resolve for doing that. You have to make resolutions for yourself. But generally at the beginning, we do not realize what resolutions to make. So I have just suggested a few individual tasks. And if you perform those tasks, while performing those tasks or after completing those tasks, you will start realizing what you need to resolve for yourself. So there are just 4 slides, and I will just show those slides for about half a minute each, just to give an idea how we can strive to become an acharya from a good teacher. And that will be the end of my talk. Next slide, please. Individual work for achieving target profile. You can undertake a small creative project or research project. A project can be just 1 or 2 days duration or a week duration. If you can afford to spend time, even a month-long project. Expounding the meaning of a motivational or devotional song before a group. Generally, singing is so engrossing that we remember the tune, sometimes the words, but don't look towards the meaning. And doing that can be a good individual task. Writing the summary of a book related to one's teaching learning subject. So 3 individual tasks are suggested here. Next slide, please. 3 more tasks here. Reading a book and presenting it in a teacher's meeting. Presenting a biographical sketch or commenting on current topics in front of students. A biographical sketch can be only of 3 minutes, just like what I told about Acharya Prafulla Chandra Sen. And right from that, you can speak for 1 hour. Start from where you are, go step by step, and you can definitely become an Acharya. Writing an essay, which was already given in the previous list. Next slide, please. This is related to academic and students. Generally, when we learn during our B.Ed how to set a question paper, we have generally 3 objectives: knowledge, understanding, and application. Can we set a separate question paper on the same unit only for knowledge, only for understanding, only for application? In our school, only for creative thinking also we had that for some time. So that makes you think differently, brings you out of the rut which has been formed, the habit of your thinking, and that brings flexibility, which is very necessary if you want to improve. Writing a teaching diary, if you are not doing it, try it for a month. And guiding a student for improvement or behavioral change, and writing a report of what you have done. Many times we do the activities, we don't write a report. When we are writing, we automatically reflect what we have done, and that reflection is very important. Last slide, please. Helping a fellow teacher in his or her non-academic responsibilities, and writing a report of the joint work. If you want to teach students how to work in pairs, you have to reflect and review how you work when you are working in pairs. So writing that report after the job is over, it can be offered voluntarily, your help to your teacher, but write a report of that. Visiting the houses of 3 students and writing a report of conversation with parents. Many times we have different problems in our mind. Those parents have different problems in their mind. So when you have an exchange, then we get the picture of the student clear in our minds. And visiting a nearby establishment, writing a proposal regarding what part of the information can be used in teaching and how it can be used in teaching. If you have to go beyond textbooks, as Prafulla Chandra Rai had suggested, then you have to be exposed to various things which are beyond textbooks. And you have to start thinking how to use them in your teaching. That takes you one step towards being an acharya. So, like the profile, this individual task also, I have given 12 as illustration. You may be doing many of those. You may be reading about or hearing about some for the first time. These can be done one task in a year also. Just 12 years to become an acharya, not much. So take your own time, go by your own pace. Just one individual task every year, and within 12 years you will become an acharya. Because that changes your mindset from being a good or a better teacher to become an acharya, not only to train conscious minds, but to train unconscious minds also. That is manifestation of perfection as suggested by Swami Vivekananda. It was nice speaking to you all, even if I could not see your faces. So I thank you all for giving a patient hearing, and according to the time available, I'll be glad to answer some of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Girish Rao, for guiding us on the path to become how to travel from a good teacher to a acharya. Due to time constraint, we can have 2 or 3 questions. You can unmute yourself. Either you can share your views or thoughts, or you can ask questions. Both things are welcome.
Sir, namaskar, sir. Am I audible?
Namaskar.
Please, Vijan, sir.
No, sir. Yes.
Yes.
Sir, just I thought of writing the question, but let me share it. Yes, about the teacher's reading. You have very nicely told that it is very essential, very much essential. That means they have to prepare their lesson. But being an administrator, I am sharing this problem. Nowadays, what we face in the school, that teachers, we get very highly qualified teachers in our schools. There is no doubt, every quality, academic qualification. But being teaching in the school level, sometimes they feel that I know my subject very well. I have passed my MA, MSc, or even we get sometimes PhD qualified teachers also. So they do not do that reading, what you are telling, that we have to read our subjects before going to the class. We have to prepare my lesson. So they hesitate. I'm not telling everybody is doing a part. A few are doing that. So how to motivate those kind of teachers? Those who are highly qualified but think that in the school level I know everything. Sir, please share your views.
So I will answer briefly. Finally, the motivation has to come from within. But what we can do, what I have tried and it has been useful, effective for some teachers, that you select a topic, not the academic subjects like history or geography or science. Select a topic like rubber, paper, freedom movement, political leaders of India, bankers of India. Now, this is a topic which we are generally not aware how much information is available in that. So I asked our librarian to collect whatever books we had in our library, search in other libraries and bring those books in interlibrary loan, which is generally possible in most libraries, and at least have a collection of about 30 to 50 books on that particular topic and put them on display for 1 week. The teachers will generally go and see the books, pick up book, glance through it, start reading, or maybe decide it will be used for future reading. But what is more important, the students also go and look at that exhibition, look at that display. The student pick up a particular book, glance through it. They find something very interesting and they want to share it with their teachers. Or they find something intriguing and they go and ask their teachers. And when the students start going and asking or sharing such information with teachers from the books in that display, the teachers have to go and search through those books. It may be only once, but if you have such displays once every month or every 2 months, the teachers become aware that there is so much information and so many books available, which generally we tend to forget after completing our academic education. So this exposure of various types of books is very important for teachers also. And this is what we can do as principals or administrators. Finally, it is self-motivation, but it triggers that motivation in many of the teachers. So some of the techniques you have to use like this, and when you start using one technique, you can think of some more. I think today I can answer this question only to this extent.
Sir, namaskar.
Namaste. Please continue.
Sir, I want to ask a very simple question, which is not directly to this chapter. Actually, sir, before that, I want to say that beginning your 2 words, remote audience, it has attracted every listener to this session. Really, it is a very good session, and we are much more benefited. But my question is like that, sir. As the science and technology is increasing in the horizon of education day by day, in the word teachers, sir, ma'am, these words are becoming so popular and demanding. And at the same time, the word acharya is vanishing from the minds of the teachers and students. Such a auspicious word, and hardly we use this word in some of the meetings or some of the sessions. What can be done to sustain this word in our society? So, sir, we need your suggestion for that, because always anybody else we tell teacher, student, sir, ma'am, but acharya hardly we say. So, what can be done for that one, sir, please?
Well, one thing is begin to use it more often. But many times you are afraid that since this word is now not much in use, if you start using it, you will look outdated to other people. So the next thing we can do is try to understand what is the meaning of the word acharya and use any suitable word for that. And as long as the meaning is conveyed, you don't have to harp much on which word you are using. Of course, I would prefer using the word acharya. I am not ashamed in using that. But the content, the meaning of that word is more important. If you have any other word, it doesn't matter. The meaning has to go. And that's why I have used the word exemplar teacher also. Maybe some will like that. You can find some such other word and start using it. The meaning of the word acharya is more important, and what word you use for that meaning is not that important. If you look at it this way, I think you can start the communication first, and many times as you go on communicating, then sometime later you can introduce the word acharya and it will be accepted very easily, even though it is not accepted in the beginning. So now I don't feel ashamed, and I can use the word acharya everywhere. But 7 or 8 years back, I spent 1 month before using the word acharya and acharya word for the first time. So you also have to get used and accustomed to the use of that word if it is not widely used in the moment. But the meaning of that word is more important, and you can use any word from any language to convey that meaning. That is my response to your question.
Thank you, sir.
We can have one more question to end question answer session. If somebody is interested, you can unmute and ask your question. Okay. Thank you very much for joining for this 5-day lecture series, where we can start our thinking regarding how we can develop ourselves as a teacher and how we have to travel up if we want to reach up to that acharya position. In first day, Madhuratai discussed with us Panchakosha, and from that session, the tagline was, a teacher has to reflect if he wants to develop himself as a teacher. Many times we normally tend to have discussion regarding what we can do for our students, what way we can develop our students, but we forget that initially we have to enrich ourselves, and if we enrich ourselves, then we can develop our student, or we can transform our skills, our potentials, our motivation in our students. So that's why always teacher has to think that how he can enrich himself. And we will continue this discussion on our WhatsApp group, what practices you are doing and what practices we can evolve together. And same way, what kind of skills we have to learn to build that energy, which was mentioned in first day, that pranamaya kosh. So skill development is needed, but ultimately that attitude and motivation we have to help ourselves to trigger that motivation. So it is up to us that we have to develop. It has to come from within. No doubt system plays a role, the surrounding plays a role to trigger that spirit, but ultimately the learner a teacher is important, and if we have that desire, definitely we can travel on this path. Teachers from Assam, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, they had registered for this workshop, and we will share PPT, and these lectures will be also available on YouTube channel, and we will update you regarding that. So I thank all participants for joining this lecture series, and we will continue this interaction regarding what kind of, how we can enrich the education system.